Stats 23 here, and today we have the Kansept Arcus. This is a Ostap Hel design. He designs so many different knives. He designs more tactical style stuff, and this particular variation with the G10 titanium frame S35 VN blade is coming in at $180. You can get it in 5 other different variations: 2 Damascus, 1 black wash, 2 satin, and this one is a stone wash. Let's get the quick specs out of the way. You have a total length of 7.86 inches, so it's more of a medium to large knife. Blade length of 3.45 inches, packing a lot of blade in that handle. You have a grip area from behind that flipper tab to the back right here of 3.6 inches. Handle scale thickness coming in pretty thin at 0.46 inches. And the closed width in the pocket from here to here is 0.94 inches. So very, very slender in the pocket. Blade stock thickness is coming in at 0.117. And the behind the edge thickness on my particular knife is around 20 thousandths, sharpened at 24 degrees per side. Let's take a close look at this. You got a nice stone wash finish on here, S35 VN Wharncliffe blade. You have dual full-length fullers that are more for aesthetics and maybe some weight relieving to balance the knife out, because I can't use them as a deployment, at least I can't. You have a very needle-like point right there for doing precision type cutting and for doing drag cuts. It's really good for that. You have a small row of moderate jimping right here. It's not super grippy, and it's not super long either. You do have somewhat of a sharpening tool, but as you can see, I sharpened this after all the testing was done, and you can see how far I came up on there with my fixed angle system. It was already kind of widened before I did the test, so I would have loved to see that come out a little bit further. However, you can fix it if you would want to yourself, because that stop pin is in front of that flipper tab. You have a high flat grind that doesn't really come up that high because it's a very narrow blade, but it does come down decently thin. Let's see how well it performs. My knife came with a pretty good edge out of box, and I think this is where it's really going to excel. In hand cuts like this, a warny blade shape is very powerful in this type of cutting. It will excel in, rope or anything that you're holding in hand. I think it did a good job here. This is another area where it's going to shine, is doing these drag cuts, precision type cutting. You have a very needle-like point for doing these type of cuts, and it was nice and sharp up there. I think it did a great job if you had to do some intricate cutting. Excellent, excellent work. Now we're going to test the ergos on this piece of birch wood, and right off the back, I can tell the handle is so skinny that the knife definitely wants to turn in the hand. So the saber grip was about the only grip I could, hold the knife comfortably. I could kind of feel the clip because of the narrow handle. It wasn't a hot spot or anything. I could just feel it. Definitely not the knife I would choose to do this type of cutting. It's just too hard to hold that handle, being as skinny as it is. But, this is not a knife I would, try to grab anyway. But could you do this in a pinch? Sure, you could do it. It's just not going to be enjoyable, and it's not going to be the easiest, at least. When cutting on a flat surface, this is about the only type of cutting that's, very easy to do, is the drag cuts. But a lot of the other cuts, while you can still get through them like this, that tip is going to come in contact with the flat surface. So you're only going to be able to use that very forward portion of that warny blade shape. It struggled right here because it was hard to get through that last little bit. Now I could have raised it up on a wooden block or something like that, but I just wanted to see if it could get through this portion at least on the flat surface. It struggled a lot right here. It's just hard to do. It's a flat blade. Your knuckles come in contact with the cutting surface pretty quick. Now this one, I'm able to do this because I'm dragging that tip. After I started, I drag the tip through, and it's going to wear out that tip rather quickly. So like I said, in-hand cutting is where this is going to shine. Doing precision cutting with that tip, this stuff just could be a little bit more difficult, but it can do it in a pinch. Now we move to the 1/2 inch sisal rope, and I have to pull it up on the block because it's just way too hard to do this without doing that. It is slicing pretty darn well, push cutting pretty much. I'm able to use, more of that cutting edge to get through the rope. But definitely not the knife I'm going to want to do this kind of work with unless I can lift it up like this. It was decent in the pinch grip. It was still a little bit harder to hold because it's such a skinny handle, but it can get it done, and I end up getting 30 cuts. I think that's more than respectable for a Warney blade, and it felt pretty decent at the end of it too. Now we're just going to see how that tip wants to penetrate this dense cardboard tube that my wife got a picture in. And it's doing a good job. It's got a very, very pokey, pointy tip, and no problem at all. Well, I hope you enjoyed that cutting. Let's close it up and take a look at the action. Now, this is a flipper deploying knife only for me. Two things that are kind of, they bother me on this one is the jimping on the flipper tab definitely could have been a little sharper and maybe one more jimp up here because it's kind of slick. And for the most part, I don't have to worry about it. However, there was something that I was noticing whenever I would go to flip this knife. Right now, easy, no problem. But sometimes I go to flip it and I could not flip it for nothing. I mean, I literally had to do like that to get the knife out. And what's happening is, at least on this particular one, and I hope it's not something that is going on with, multiple of them. If I push down on this lock bar right here, and sometimes, being that it's a narrow handle, my finger was coming in contact with it, and I'll do it right now. Let me see if I can show you this. So you can see how it's sitting up right there, and now it's sitting flush with the frame, or pretty darn close. So what's happening is that detent ball is falling all the way down into, is falling all the way down into that detent hole, causing it to almost be unflippable, especially whenever you don't have grippy jimping right here. Like I said, one more would have made it great. Now, now that I know that that's like that, I haven't had that issue because I keep my finger right here for the most part, and it's not usually a problem. But whenever I don't notice I do it and I go to flip it, talk about uncomfortable. At least they rounded over this top spot so it's not a pokey area. And they do have a chamfer on both sides of that. Now, other than that, the action is super snappy and very, very smooth. Very, very smooth. And that's a very light blade. That's just something that I had to point out. Now, let's close it up and take a look at these handle scales and hardware. You have a T8 on the pivot, T8 on the body screw. Very minimal construction, very nicely done. You have, on my particular one, a green peel ply G10 inlay over a titanium frame. They did a good job with it. It is inset into the frame. You can't feel any transition points. I don't see any major gaps or anything. You have these big chamfers on both sides, giving it that contoured effect. And for the most part, during the cutting, it was fairly comfortable. Now, you have a very narrow handle, and you have a pocket clip that does stick up. I can feel it in the hand when doing cutting, whenever I'm pushing down, but it's not a hot spot per se because they did a good job of knocking down all the corners on that very minimal mill titanium clip. Now, being that it's that narrow, whenever you're, say doing wood carving or something like that, really pushing down into the wood, it wants to spin in the hand. Only way I could kind of stop it is holding it in a saber grip. That was the most comfortable grip I could find. I have to make a correction on the hardware. I think I said T8 for the body screw. It's T6 for the body screw and for the clip screw and the lock bar insert. We have a nice, attractive 3D mill titanium pocket clip. Let's check it out in the pocket. It functions nicely. It goes in and out of the pocket nicely, and being that it's very narrow, it's not going to take up much room, but you do have a flipper tab that will come in contact with anything else that you put into the pocket. That's all you have sticking out, and not bad at all. Now, it is tip up, right hand carry only. Flip it over. You do have a hidden lanyard post back there, like that, rather than a hole anywhere in the scales. You don't have any internal milling because you have the milling for this G10. So it's still super, super light. Let's check it out on the scale. First off, in grams, 75.6 or 0.7 grams, 2.67 ounces. And I think that's what I like about this knife so much. It's so thin, streamlined, minimal footprint, and so light in the pocket. All right, let's take a look at the lockup. Mine is sitting at around 40%. It's got a steel hardened lock bar interface in there that can be changed out if it needed to be. The access to that lock bar is okay, even though it's flush with the show side scale. They have a nice little chamfer right there, and I find it very easy to get to it. The lockup, solid on mine, no play side to side, none up and down. Quick size comparison with similar style knives. You have the Boker Quake and Air and the Boker Kaizen. It's right in the middle of those. Ontario Rat 1 and 2, it's in the middle of those. Lastly, we have the Hogue Ritter RSK full size and the Quiet Carry IQ large. It is very similar to both of these. The Hogue Ritter is a little bit longer and the IQ is just a hair shorter. All right, let's go back over my nitpicks and complaints. First, I would have loved to see this sharpening choil clear that plunge and give me a little bit of sharpening life. But like I said, I can't fix that myself. Maybe a little bit longer row of jimping here and maybe a little bit more traction for people who like jimping. But I think the biggest thing for me is this detent ball. You know, when it's not, you know, all the way down into the detent hole, it's excellent action. But if I push there, it's just way too strong. So that, you know, it's not a deal breaker for me on this knife because I like everything else about the knife besides the little nitpicks I talked about. Of course, it'd have been nice if it was tip up left-handed as well, but I didn't design this knife. I would have loved to see these on the inside, but I think they look decent, you know, the way they did them. But overall, do I like the knife? I actually love the knife. You know, the weight on it's so good, and I don't really have any, you know, super slim and sleek knives like this, and the action on it is superb. You know, especially if I don't push that detent ball in. And I would love to know if anybody else gets this knife. Let me know if yours has that issue. Try pushing that lock bar down once it's in there and see if it's very hard to disengage the knife. But, you know, it's going to be up to you whether, you know, any of those complaints I have are deal breakers for you or not. The price, you know, it's pretty, you know, in line with most of what you're seeing now, especially with inlays in it. And S35, you know, it's a good steel. It's a stainless steel. I know a lot of people rather other steels, but I'm perfectly okay with it. And I like a lot of Ostap Hell's designs. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.